Welcome. Come on in. Close the door behind you and make yourself comfortable. And listen closely. Sometimes life comes to a halt. We watch everything freeze in a peaceful stillness, like witnessing a car crash in slow motion. Something breaks, a road disappears, a door slams shut in our face. And there we are, in the uncomfortable silence that follows, asking ourselves, now what? The hardest part about starting over isn't the change itself, it's the uncertainty. We don't know if what we left behind was the best we could have had, or if what lies ahead will be any better. We're terrified of letting go because the void frightens us more than the pain of the old. But here's the trap. The fear of starting again is an illusion. It's not the unknown that paralyzes us. It's the stories we tell ourselves about it. We repeat to ourselves that we've failed, that we've wasted time, that it's too late. And without realizing it, we become prisoners of a version of ourselves that no longer exists. But here is the truth. No one truly starts from zero. Everything we've lived, everything we've learned, everything we've survived stays within us. We are not in ruins. We are under reconstruction. This audiobook is not a guide filled with cheap optimism. It's not going to tell you that everything happens for a reason or that life has a perfect plan. Because sometimes life doesn't make sense. Sometimes what you lost shouldn't have been lost. Sometimes what hurts really hurts, and that's okay. But here comes the key question. If we've already reached this point, if we've already lost, if we're already here, why not turn this into the most powerful reset of our entire life? This audiobook is for you if something in your life broke. It's for you if you've tried to change, but always end up in the same place. It's for you if you feel trapped in a story you no longer want to live. We're not going to talk about empty affirmations or short-lived motivation. We're going to dismantle the lies that keep us stuck. We're going to question everything you believed about change, about fear, about failure. And in the end, you'll discover something surprising. You don't need permission to begin again. You don't need the perfect timing. You don't need to understand every step before you take it. You only need one thing, to decide that this time it will be different. And this time it will be. Because this time you're going to do it for real. Chapter 1. You're not broken, you're in transition. Life never sends a warning when it decides to change everything. It doesn't notify you, it doesn't ask if you're ready, and it doesn't wait for you to sort out the chaos in your mind. One day, what you took for granted simply vanishes. The person you relied on leaves. The job that supported you disappears. The stability you clung to shatters like glass on the floor. And there you are, standing among the pieces of what you thought was your life, asking yourself, now what? Some people try to glue the pieces back together with whatever they can find. Distractions, denial, impulsive plans that lead nowhere. Others freeze, staring at the wreckage, unsure whether to cry, scream, or give up. But there's a third option. The one nobody teaches us, the one that's absent from textbooks and family advice. To accept that you're not in ruins, you're standing on the foundation of something new. The human mind doesn't process change instantly. It doesn't matter whether it was a breakup, a layoff, a failure, or a blow you never saw coming. The first reaction is rejection, denial, a sense of injustice. This shouldn't be happening. This wasn't in the plan, as if life were obligated to follow our script, as if the story of our existence had to match the image we built in our minds. The truth is, nothing you lost was ever truly yours. Not the stability, not the certainty, not the illusion that everything would remain the same. The only constant in life is change, but we've been trained to fear it rather than embrace it. We cling to jobs that destroy us, to relationships that drain us, to routines that numb us, just because they give us the illusion of control. And when that false control vanishes, it feels like we're falling into an abyss. But here's the big secret. It's not an abyss. It's a new beginning. The freest people in the world are not the ones who never lost anything. They're the ones who learned to start over without fear. Because they understood something most people spend a lifetime trying to grasp. Nothing you lose is as valuable as what you can build when you stop resisting change. Still, we keep telling ourselves the same stories. We say we can't start from scratch because it's too late, or I don't know how, or I've always been this way. We don't realize those are invisible prisons. Every time we say, this is just how it is, we're signing our sentence to a stagnant life. The mind has a twisted gift for convincing us that the familiar, no matter how painful, is better than the unknown. That's why people stay in jobs they hate for decades, in relationships that shrink them, in lives they stopped owning long ago. Not because they can't change, but because fear of the new outweighs the pain of the old. But if there's one thing life has taught you, it's this. Everything that once scared you eventually stopped being scary. Think about your first days of school, the first time you faced the unknown, the anxiety, the uncertainty, the fear of not fitting in. And yet, days passed, weeks passed, and suddenly, what once paralyzed you became a part of your life, not because the world changed, but because you did. And that's what life is asking of you now, to change again, to let go of the fear of beginning again, to stop wondering if this is the right moment, because the right moment never comes. There is only now, only this instant where you can decide to cling to a life that no longer exists or open the door to what's next. There's nothing more powerful than a human being who chooses to start again without needing guarantees. It's the bravest act there is, because it means trusting life without a map, walking without knowing exactly where the road leads, saying, I don't know what comes next, but I know I can't stay where I no longer belong. The people who have transformed their lives the most weren't the ones with the perfect plan. They were the ones who, one day in the middle of chaos, made a different decision. They didn't wait to feel ready. They didn't wait for the perfect sign. They simply realized that staying the same was scarier than changing. And this is where your story begins. Not with the certainty that everything will be okay. Not with a flawless plan that erases all risk. Just with one decision. I won't stay stuck in what no longer is. I won't keep justifying a life that no longer belongs to me. I won't waste another moment wondering what would happen if I had the courage to start again. Because that courage is already in you. It always has been. The only question is, are you going to use it? In a corner of the world where few are looking, something happened that's worth remembering. There was a man who had been trapped in a draining routine for years. Every morning he woke up with the same weight in his chest, the same feeling that his life didn't belong to him. His job was a sand castle held together by inertia, his relationship a habit that no longer made sense, his reflection a reminder of everything he hadn't dared to change. One day, in a desperate impulse, he packed a suitcase and left. He bought a train ticket, left everything behind, and swore that, finally, he would start from scratch. He moved to a city where no one knew him, found a different job, changed the way he dressed. He even started going by his middle name, as if that could erase his past. But as the months went by, the same emptiness reappeared, the same dissatisfaction, the same feeling of being trapped in a life that wasn't his. That's when he realized something that hit him like a lightning bolt. You can change your location, your job, your partner, your name, but if you don't change on the inside, sooner or later, you'll become exactly who you've always been. This is what most people don't understand when they try to start over. They believe that an external change is enough to reset life, when in reality, true transformation is internal. That's why some people leave everything behind only to find themselves facing the same problems in another city, another relationship, another job. It's not the world they're repeating, it's their mental programming. Human beings are machines built to repeat what they know, even if it makes them miserable. That's why some people leave toxic relationships only to end up in another just like it. That's why someone who grew up witnessing scarcity, even if they earn more money, somehow always ends up back in crisis. That's why people afraid of abandonment unconsciously provoke the very rejection they fear most. We are not bound to the life we want. We are bound to the life we believe we deserve. From the moment we're born, the mind begins to fill with stories about who we are and what we can expect from the world. Stories learned from our parents, from society, from the wounds life has left behind. If you grew up hearing that money is hard to come by, your mind will look for proof of that no matter how much you earn. If you learned that love hurts, you'll unconsciously choose people who reinforce that belief. If you were taught to fear change, you'll convince yourself that any attempt to reinvent yourself is doomed to fail. The problem is that these stories aren't obvious. No one says to themselves, "I want to suffer. I want to fail. I want to keep repeating what hurts me." No, the trap is subtler. It works at the subconscious level, in the decisions we believe we're making freely, but which are actually dictated by a script we've never questioned. Life is accumulated memory, not just in the mind, but in the body, in our emotions, in the way we react without thinking. That's why someone may have everything they need to start over and still fall into the same patterns. It's not bad luck. It's the same person making the same decisions with a new backdrop. Think of it like a compass that, no matter how far you walk, always points in the same direction. If you don't recalibrate it, if you don't teach it to orient toward a new destination, you'll inevitably end up right back where you started. But here's the good news. That compass can be changed. The life story we carry can be rewritten. We're not doomed to repeat the same mistakes or to live within the limits we were taught. And this is where the real question begins. What story are you telling yourself? Not the one you say out loud, not the one you want to believe, the one your mind repeats when you're not listening. If someone constantly tells themselves, "I'm not good enough," their life will revolve around proving that belief right. They'll sabotage opportunities, settle for less, and surround themselves with people who reinforce that idea. If someone thinks, "I have no luck," they'll find reasons to justify every obstacle, every failure, every setback. If someone believes, "I can't change," that belief will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. The truth is, we are not what happens to us. We are what we choose to do with what happens to us. Some people use their wounds as excuses. Others use them as fuel. Some see their past as a curse. Others see it as proof they can survive anything. Some believe their past defines them. Others understand that the only thing that truly defines a person is what they choose to do with their present. Once we understand this, the fear of starting over dissolves. Because it's no longer about erasing the past, it's about learning from it without staying trapped in its shadow. Starting over doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It doesn't mean denying who we were. It's not about putting on a new mask and hoping that changes everything. Starting over means deciding that our story doesn't end with what happened to us, that we can rewrite the ending, that we can break the cycles that hold us back, that we can be more than the reflection of what we were taught to be. This is where true transformation begins, not when the world changes, but when we choose to change the way we see it. One of the hardest truths to accept is that we don't live in reality. We live in our interpretation of it. What we see on the outside is only a reflection of what we carry inside. And this isn't just a feel-good phrase. It's how the human mind actually works. Two people can go through the same experience and live it in completely different ways. A layoff, for example. For one, it's the greatest failure of their life. For the other, it's the chance to finally do something they love. The same goes for breakups, for loss, for unexpected change. It's not what happens that defines us, it's what we decide to do with what happens. The mind is a script that keeps replaying itself until someone has the courage to rewrite it. This is where most people get stuck. They want to start over, but they try to do it with the same mindset that brought them to where they are. They expect different results without changing the way they think, react, or make decisions. And then they wonder why everything stays the same. If you want a new beginning, you first need a new way of seeing yourself. Think about it. If someone grew up in a cage, even if the door were opened one day, they'd still behave as though they were locked inside, because their mind was trained to move within certain limits. The same thing happens to us. It doesn't matter how many opportunities lie ahead if our mindset is still trapped in past programming. A human being is not just what they do. They are what they believe they deserve. And most of the time, what we believe we deserve comes from what we learned in childhood. If you grew up watching your parents struggle with money, you'll likely repeat that story unconsciously. If you witness dysfunctional relationships without realizing it, you'll seek out similar dynamics. Not because you want to, but because it feels familiar. And here's the key. What's familiar is not always what's best for you. The human brain has one primary function, survival. And for the mind, familiar equals safe. That's why even if something hurts us, if it's what we've known our whole lives, we'll still feel drawn to repeat it. It's the reason someone keeps going back to the same toxic relationship, or ends up in jobs where they're exploited, or repeats the same financial mistakes, even though they swear this time it'll be different. It's not about willpower, it's about programming. And the good news is, programming can be changed. The mind is like a river. If it's flowed in one direction for years, it's not enough to say, I want to change. You have to redirect the flow of the water, create new connections, reinforce new paths. That's why real change doesn't happen overnight. It takes a process, an internal re-education, a new way of speaking to yourself. It all starts with your inner dialogue. Think about it. If someone spent the whole day telling you that you're worthless, unlucky, not good enough, you'd believe it eventually. But here's the twist. That's exactly what many people tell themselves without even realizing it. If someone repeats, "I'm not enough," over and over, it doesn't matter how much success they have. They'll always find a way to sabotage it. If someone keeps saying, "I can't change," the mind takes it as a command and will prove it to be true. If someone thinks, "Love always goes wrong for me," they'll attract dynamics that confirm it. And so comes the big question. What story are you telling yourself? Not the one you share with others, not the one you want to believe, the one your mind repeats when no one is listening. If you want to start from zero, you must first rewrite that story. Ask yourself this. If you had never learned what you've learned, if no one had told you what to expect from life, if you could design yourself from scratch, who would you be? Most people never give themselves the chance to answer that question because they've been too busy living the script they were handed. But the truth is, you can start building yourself consciously at any moment. You are not your past. You are not the decisions you made when you didn't know what you know now. You are not the person who made mistakes from a place of unawareness. You are who you choose to become starting today. And if you choose to be someone new, there's something you need to know. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. Change doesn't feel good in the beginning, not because it's wrong, but because the brain hates the unknown. If someone has spent years believing they're not enough, suddenly saying, "I'm worthy," will feel fake. If someone has lived in fear of failure, taking risks will make them feel exposed. But here's the key. Discomfort is proof that you're breaking the old programming. No one feels confident when they're learning something new, But the only way to become good at anything is to keep practicing. If today you decide to treat yourself with more love, it will feel strange at first. But if you keep doing it, one day you'll realize it's no longer an effort. It has become your new way of being. If today you decide to stop repeating a negative cycle, your mind will try to pull you back. It will tell you it's easier to stay the same. But if you keep moving forward, there will come a point when you'll look back and wonder how you could have lived that way for so long. Because in the end, life doesn't change when you think about it. It changes when you live it. If you want to start from zero, wanting it is not enough. Reading a book is not enough. Saying, "I'm going to change," is not enough. You have to live it. You have to act like the person you want to become until it becomes who you truly are. The problem is, most people wait to feel ready before they take action. But the truth is, you'll never feel ready to change. There won't be a magical morning when you wake up and think, "Now I'm prepared." The people who transform their lives are not the ones who wait for confidence. They are the ones who act without it. And here comes the final question. Are you willing to take action before you feel ready? Because if your answer is yes, then you're closer to starting from zero than you think. The art of starting from zero is not just a pretty phrase. It's a skill. It's a muscle that, if left untrained, atrophies. Many people think that starting over means throwing everything away and beginning from nothing. But in reality, no one starts from nothing. It's not like we wake up one day with a blank memory, no past, no scars, no lessons learned. No. Starting from zero doesn't mean forgetting what you've lived. It means using it to your advantage. Imagine for a moment that life is a canvas. Some people, when they feel they've made mistakes, try to erase what they've painted. But the problem with erasing is that there's always a mark, a trace, a shadow of what was. Others, however, understand that there's no need to erase, only to paint over it. That's how personal transformation works. It's not about denying what you've lived, but about giving it a new meaning. It's not about running from the past, but choosing what you'll do with what you've learned. But here's the problem. Most people don't really start from zero. They recycle their story with different names, different faces, different circumstances, but with the same energy as before. The one who's been betrayed in relationships, if they don't heal, will attract the same kind of relationships again. The one who grew up fearing money, if they don't reprogram their mindset, will live in fear of losing it, even if they earn millions. The one who's always felt invisible, if they don't work on their self-worth, will keep seeking validation from others, no matter how many times they start over. Because the art of starting from zero isn't about changing your location, it's about changing your mindset. And here lies the great key. You cannot build a new life with the same mindset that created the old one. Human beings are experts at dragging old luggage into new destinations. One day, someone moves to a new city thinking their life will be different there, but within a year, they realize their problems followed them. Another changes jobs hoping everything will improve, but months later, they feel just as dissatisfied. Another ends a toxic relationship and swears they'll never repeat the pattern, only to find themselves 6 months later with someone exactly the same. Why does this happen? Because the problem is not outside. It's inside us. The art of starting from zero begins when you stop focusing on what needs to change on the outside and start working on what needs to shift within. The question we should be asking is not, how do I start over, but rather, how can I become someone who no longer needs to keep starting over from the same place? And here comes one of the hardest truths to accept. You cannot change your life without changing how you think, how you react, and how you decide. If you don't, all you'll do is repeat your past with a different backdrop. The art of starting from zero requires one of the most powerful human abilities, the capacity to observe yourself without self-deception. Most people don't change because they keep telling themselves false stories. They say things like, "This is just who I am. I can't change. That's life. There's nothing I can do. This is my fate." And when someone lives inside a story they never question, that story becomes their prison. To start from zero, the first question you must ask yourself is, what story am I telling myself about who I am? If the story is that of a victim, life will keep confirming it. If the story is one of constant struggle, life will continue handing you battles. If the story is one of limitation, you'll keep finding reasons not to move forward. The mind doesn't seek the truth. It seeks confirmation of what it already believes. That's why, if you truly want to start over, you must be brave enough to challenge the story you've been telling yourself your whole life. Try this. Write the story of your life as if you were someone else reading about you. Look at the patterns. Notice how you describe yourself. Are you the hero of your story or the victim? Are you someone with power over your life or someone always waiting for something to change from the outside? Now write a new version of that story. Not with what has happened, but with what you want to happen. Not with the mistakes, but with what you've learned. Not with the problems, but with what you're ready to create. Every time your mind tries to replay the old story, rewrite the script. If you catch yourself thinking, "I'm not good enough," pause and ask, is this a fact or just an old belief I've been dragging around? If you hear yourself say, "The same thing always happens to me," question it. Or do I just react the same way every time it does? Because the art of starting from zero is not about erasing your previous life. It's about making something new out of it. Here's a revolutionary idea. What you've lived doesn't define you, but it does belong to you. The problem is not the past. It's the meaning you give it. If you believe everything you've lived through has been a waste of time, you'll live in frustration. But if you decide it was all part of your growth process, you'll begin to live with gratitude. And here's the way out. Gratitude is the key to a new beginning. If you're grateful for what you've lived, you stop resisting it. If you stop resisting it, you stop repeating it. If you stop repeating it, you free yourself. You can't start from zero if you're still resenting the past. The art of starting from zero is an act of emotional maturity. It's telling yourself, "I wouldn't change anything I've lived because, without it, I wouldn't be who I am today. But I can choose what I do with all of it from now on." This is where many people fail. They believe that in order to heal, they have to change their past. But the past cannot be changed. What changes is the interpretation. If you went through a toxic relationship, you don't need to deny it. You just need to understand what it taught you. If you missed opportunities, you don't need to regret them. You just need to make sure you're ready to seize the next ones. If you made mistakes, you don't need to punish yourself. You just need to learn from them so you don't repeat them. Nothing you've lived was in vain. Everything was raw material for the person you're meant to become. And here comes the ultimate conclusion. There's no real point zero. There's no magical eraser. There's no reset button that deletes everything. But there is a choice. To keep being who you've been or to start being who you truly want to be. And that's the only choice that truly matters. Chapter 2. Every ending is the prologue to a new story. When I was a child, there was a game I was obsessed with. A maze printed on the back of cereal boxes, where you'd trace a path with a pencil from the start to the finish. I spent hours trying to solve them until one day I discovered a trick. If you started from the goal and traced backward, the route was much easier. I didn't know it then, but I had just stumbled upon one of the greatest secrets of the human mind. We've been taught to move through life as if we're solving the maze from the entrance, making decisions at each turn without knowing where they lead. But what few people realize is that most of us already have a path mapped out. We just don't know it yet. The life you're living didn't start when you chose a career or a partner. It began long before that, when you weren't even aware you were making decisions. The environment we grew up in, the words we heard, the fears we inherited, all of that is like a program running in the background. We think we're choosing freely, but in reality, we're following the same mental circuit over and over again. If you want to change your life, you can't start from where you are. You have to do what I did with those mazes, go backward and figure out how you got here. Most people don't start from zero. They start from a repeated story. The mind has memory, and life follows the route that memory has traced so far. Imagine walking into a movie theater and realizing a film is already playing. You sit down and start watching. At first, the plot seems fascinating, but after a while, you realize you've seen this movie before. Not once, but many times. You know every plot twist, every line of dialogue, every mistake the protagonist will make. The question is, if you already know how it ends, why are you still watching the same movie? This is the dilemma of most people who try to start over. They change partners, cities, jobs, but end up in the same storyline with the same type of people, facing the same conflicts. Not because the world is unfair, but because the mind keeps playing the same film on repeat. There are people who spend their lives changing the external scenery but never revise the internal script. And if the script stays the same, the outcome always will be too. But here's the good news. We are not doomed to repeat the film. It's not a fixed fate. It's just the path our minds have been following out of habit. If you want to rewrite your story, the first thing you need to do is discover what story you've been telling without realizing it. The human brain isn't built for freedom. It's built for safety. It prefers the familiar over the unknown. If it's found that a certain path works, even if it hurts, frustrates, or exhausts, it'll keep choosing that path because it's predictable. That's why some people, no matter how many times they try to change, always end up back where they started. Someone who's learned that love means sacrifice will always find relationships that demand it. Someone who grew up surrounded by scarcity, even if they earn millions, will somehow return to lack. Someone who believes they only have value when serving others will constantly give themselves away until they are empty. It's not bad luck or punishment. It's simply the repetition of what the mind has learned. But here's the key. Once you see the pattern, you can change it. The problem is, most people never see it. They think the problem is external, economy, destiny, misfortune. They never stop to ask what part of their mind is attracting the same results. And this is where true reinvention begins. To start over, it's not enough to change your city, your partner, your job. You have to change the story your mind has been telling. Once, while talking to a friend who'd gone through several breakups, I noticed something. Every time a relationship ended, he would say the exact same things. They always leave me for someone else. I'm always the one who gives more. No matter how hard I try, I always end up alone. Always, always, always. I asked him if he realized he was describing his life like a recycled script. He looked surprised. He had never thought of it that way. His story wasn't unique. Plenty of people say, I always fail in business. I always trust the wrong people. I always get left behind. Life wasn't just happening to them. It was the story they had learned to tell, and the mind was just doing its job, repeating it. The mind is like an algorithm. Feed it the same data, and it will give you the same result. If every time you begin something you think, I'm terrible at this always goes wrong for me, then the mind will do everything it can to prove you right. That's why starting from zero isn't enough, because if we don't change our internal programming, everything we build will rest on the same faulty foundation. There are people who think they've changed just because their life looks different on the outside, but scratch the surface, and the core remains unchanged. Think about it. If you leave a toxic relationship only to enter another with someone just like them, Did you really change? If you quit a job where you were being exploited but end up in another with the same issues, did you really move forward? If you move to another country to escape your problems but bring the same fears with you, did you really start over? Here lies the biggest trap: believing that external change is enough to transform your life. But life doesn't change with geography, a new partner, or a new job. It changes when you decide to rewrite the source code you've been living by. The human mind is an inflexible narrator. Once it learns a story, it repeats it endlessly. But it doesn't tell it like a fairy tale. It weaves it into your decisions, your emotions, the way you react to life. What you believe about yourself isn't truth. It's just a story told so many times. It has become unquestionable inside your head. And here's the trap. It doesn't matter whether it's true, only whether it feels believable to you. People who believe that the same thing always happens to me aren't misreading reality, they're creating it. The mind is lazy. It loves repetition because repetition feels safe. If it's lived something before, it knows how to react, what to expect, what to feel. It doesn't like uncertainty because uncertainty forces it to do something it hates: adapt. That's why every time you try to do something different, every time you're on the verge of change, the mind activates its strongest weapon: fear. It's not the kind of fear that screams panic. It's more subtle. It speaks in logic. It whispers sensible reasons to stay where you are. Now's not the time. You don't have what it takes. What if it goes wrong? What if you lose what little you have? What if you regret it later? It's no coincidence that fear shows up the moment you're about to do something different. It's your mind saying, why change what we already know? And what we know, even if it hurts, is always easier than what we don't. This is where most people give up. They confuse fear with danger, when in reality, it's only a sign that they're stepping out of the mind's familiar script. Fear isn't the enemy. It's a compass. If something terrifies you, it's probably because it means growth. Fear doesn't show up when you're repeating the same old path. It shows up when you're nearing the possibility of becoming someone new. That's why people can make the same poor decisions over and over again without hesitation, but panic the moment they get a chance to truly change. Not because change is bad, but because it's unfamiliar. If fear is triggered when you're headed in the right direction, then stop seeing it as a wall and start using it as a doorway. People who've changed their lives aren't those who defeated fear. They're the ones who understood that fear is a sign they're moving forward. So the next time something scares you, ask yourself, am I afraid because it's dangerous or just because it's unfamiliar? If the answer is simply that it's new, then it's exactly what you should be doing. The problem is that no one taught us to move through fear. We were taught to avoid it. We were told that if something makes us afraid, it's probably risky. When in reality, the riskiest thing is staying stuck in the same place out of fear. Think about it. How long have you stayed in a situation just because fear convinced you that leaving would be worse? Fear isn't real. It's a misunderstood defense mechanism. It's not there to stop you from changing. It's there because the mind thinks change is a threat, but it's not. If you can learn to see fear as proof that you're moving in the right direction, then every time it shows up, it won't paralyze you. It will propel you. The trick is to take action before the mind has time to sabotage you. The more you think, the more your brain starts finding reasons to stay in your comfort zone. Doubt multiplies. Excuses build, and you end up exactly where you've always been. The key to starting over isn't waiting until you feel ready. It's moving before the mind convinces you not to. This applies to everything. If you want to change jobs, send the resume before your mind floods you with what-ifs. If you want to talk to someone, speak before you start imagining all the things that could go wrong. If you want to start a business, begin before you've calculated every possible failure. Action must come before thought, not after. What separates those who reinvent themselves from those who never do isn't ability, talent, or luck. It's how quickly they act before their mind talks them out of it. This is where so many go wrong. They believe that in order to start from zero, they first need to feel safe, confident, and inspired. But security doesn't come before change. It comes after. No one feels ready before doing something great. No one feels fully in control before changing their life. No one is ever completely prepared before making an important decision. And yet, some leap and others wait for the perfect moment. What's the difference? The first group acts despite the discomfort. Discomfort is the greatest sign that you're standing at the threshold of something new. It's the space between the person you were and the person you could become. But most people retreat the moment they feel that discomfort. And that's where they fail, not because they're not capable, but because they misinterpret the signal. Discomfort is not a sign that you should stop. It's a sign that you're heading in the right direction. If you can change your relationship with discomfort, if you start seeing it as an indication of growth instead of a warning of danger, then you'll have an advantage over 90% of people. Because most will keep waiting for the perfect moment, waiting to feel ready, waiting for life to give them permission. And while they wait, time keeps running. The biggest enemy of change is not a lack of opportunity. It's not a lack of resources. It's not a lack of talent. It's the waiting. The perfect moment never comes. Clarity doesn't come before action. It comes with action. You only begin to see the path once you've taken the first step. If you wait to see everything before moving, you'll never move. Real change begins when you understand that the only way to learn is by doing. Everything else is just an elegant form of procrastination. Life moves in cycles of endings and new beginnings, even though we cling to the illusion that everything should be linear. But no one prepared us for the interruptions, for those moments when who we were is no longer useful and who we could become has yet to take shape. That's where most people get stuck, in the limbo between what they've lost and what they haven't yet built. Some call it a crisis, others call it opportunity. But in truth, it's an invitation to reinvent yourself. The real question is, how do you move forward when the fear of the unknown is stronger than the desire to change? Matteo had built a business with his own hands. It took him years. He stayed up late, sacrificed himself, invested every penny, and for a while, things went well, until they didn't. The crisis came without warning, and overnight, everything he had built began to crumble. He tried to hold on, but it was like trying to carry water in his hands. It slipped through faster than he could contain it. When he closed the business for the last time, something deeper closed inside him too. It wasn't just a financial failure. It was the collapse of the identity he had constructed around that business. Who am I now? If I'm no longer the business owner, then who? And that's the real struggle when it comes to starting over. We're not willing to let go of who we were because we have no idea who else we could be. Matteo spent months in a kind of mourning, not for the money, but for the feeling that he'd lost his place in the world. Until he realized something. His worth wasn't in the business. His worth didn't depend on the outcome. He wasn't his company. He wasn't his success. He wasn't his failure. He was the person who had built something once, and he could build again. And in that moment, he stopped trying to revive the past and began to design something new. Most people who remain stuck after a loss are at war with the inevitable. They want the past to return instead of accepting the opportunity of a different present. You are not what you lost. You are what you are capable of creating again. Not everything that ends is a business or a project. Sometimes what collapses is the life you built with another person. Clara spent 10 years in a relationship that, at first, seemed like everything she had always wanted. But over time, things changed. Or perhaps they simply revealed their true nature. Love turned into habit. Togetherness became absence. But the fear of being alone was stronger than the unhappiness of staying in an empty relationship. Until he left. And in that moment, Clara felt the world shatter beneath her feet. Not because she missed him, but because she didn't know how to exist outside of that relationship. Her identity had been tied to someone else for so long that now, without him, she felt like a character with no storyline. This is the problem for many who fear starting over. They confuse loneliness with abandonment. But loneliness doesn't happen when someone leaves. It happens when you never learn to be with yourself. Clara spent months trying to fill the emptiness with distractions, with outings, with new people. But it wasn't company she needed. She needed to find herself in her own reflection. One day she woke up and realized the problem wasn't being alone. The problem was that she had never learned to enjoy her own company. So, instead of rushing to fill the space with someone else, she decided to fill it with herself. She traveled alone for the first time. She sat in a cafe without feeling like she had to justify her presence. She reconnected with dreams she had shelved in the name of the relationship. And that's when she understood that the worst kind of loneliness isn't the one you feel when you're alone. It's the one you feel when you abandon yourself. Learning to be with yourself is the foundation for not losing yourself in someone else's life. Not everyone starts from zero because they lost everything. Some start from zero because they realize they never had the courage to start at all. David had a stable job, a decent salary, a predictable life. On the outside, everything looked fine. But inside, he felt something was missing. He had always wanted to do something more creative. But every time the thought came up, he told himself, "It's not the right time." The problem with "it's not the right time" is that it becomes an eternal phrase. David spent years postponing his dreams with excuses dressed as logic. When I have more savings, when my kids are older, when the market improves. Until one day, he realized he wasn't waiting for the perfect moment. He was waiting for permission to live, and the only one who could give it to him was himself. When he decided to change, he had no guarantees. He had no perfect plan. He didn't know if it would work. The only thing he knew was that if he didn't try, the rest of his life would be a repetition of the same day. And he understood that sometimes you don't need to have it all figured out before you move. You just need to move. The perfect moment doesn't exist. The only way to change your life is to stop waiting and begin. People who stay trapped in their previous version don't do it because they can't change. They do it because they fear what might come next. But here's the twist. What comes next is something you get to build. The world isn't a fixed destination. There isn't just one path. There isn't just one outcome. Every story we tell is proof that even when fear tells us it's impossible, the truth is that we can always begin again. But first, we have to stop waiting for guarantees. First, we have to let go of what is no longer ours. First, we must understand that starting from zero isn't losing, it's discovering. If life has taught us anything, it's that we're always one decision away from changing everything. But most of the time, we postpone that decision out of fear of the unknown. Uncertainty terrifies us more than the unhappiness we've already made peace with. Underscore 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 underscore. Most people would rather stay in a life that feels safe, even if it doesn't make them happy, than take the risk of discovering who they could become if they had the courage to start from zero. But life doesn't wait. And when we hold on too tightly to the old, more often than not, life pushes us without asking. Some people wait until everything collapses before they move. Others learn to let go before the weight becomes unbearable. The big question is, will you wait until life forces you, or will you make the decision yourself? Eva had known for a long time that her relationship was dead long before it ended. Every argument felt like years piling on her shoulders. Every time she looked in the mirror, she saw a tired version of the woman she once was. And yet, she stayed, not out of love, but out of fear for what would come next. The day he left, she felt like a part of her had been ripped away, not because she missed him, but because her entire identity had been built around the relationship. Her sense of self was tied to us, and when us no longer existed, she didn't know who she was anymore. She spent months in denial. She thought maybe he'd come back. Maybe there was something she could do to get him back. But with each passing day, she came to realize that what she really needed to recover was herself. One morning, without warning, she woke up and asked herself, if I wasn't the person I've been until now, who would I want to be? That question changed everything. For the first time, she stopped looking back and started looking forward. That was the beginning of her new life. Don't wait for life to rip away what no longer works. Learn to let go before it's taken from you. Some people have to start from zero because they've lost everything, but others have everything and still feel the need to start again. Marco had a high-paying job, a beautiful home, and a life that, from the outside, looked enviable. But every morning he woke up with a strange emptiness he couldn't explain. He had been told that if he worked hard, he'd succeed, and if he succeeded, he'd be happy. But he had followed all the rules and happiness had never arrived. When he confided in a friend, that friend said something he'd never forget. Maybe the life you've built is the life you wanted 10 years ago, but not the one you need today. That sentence haunted him for weeks. For the first time, he realized that he wasn't unhappy because his life was bad. He was unhappy because he had changed, but his life hadn't changed with him. Sometimes, the hardest part of starting from zero isn't letting go of what hurts you. It's letting go of what gave you stability, but no longer fulfills you. One day, he made a decision. He didn't leave everything behind all at once, but he started making small changes. He changed his routine. He made time to explore what truly interested him. He dared to say no to the things he used to accept by default. And little by little, his life started to resemble the person he was becoming, rather than the person he used to be. Don't cling to what you built just because it took you a lot of effort. If it no longer brings you joy, it's not your destiny. There always comes a moment in life when something inside whispers, "This is not the way." Sometimes we ignore it. Sometimes we disguise it as stress, exhaustion, or a crisis. But the truth is, it's not the world that feels heavy. It's the life that no longer fits who you are now. There are signs that it's time to start over. When you feel trapped but can't explain why. When you're successful but don't feel fulfilled. When you keep doing the same things, hoping that one day it'll feel different. When the fear of change is strong, but the fear of staying where you are is even stronger. The problem is that we've been programmed to resist change, not to seek it. But every rebirth begins with a single act of bravery. You don't need to know exactly where you're going. You don't need guarantees. You don't need all the answers. All you need is to take the first step. The world is full of stories of people who lost everything and found a better life on the other side of the chaos. But there's something they rarely tell us about those new beginnings. They weren't easy. They were confusing, painful, full of doubt. Because starting from zero doesn't feel like immediate freedom. It feels like jumping into the unknown. But what scares us isn't the unknown. It's the idea that maybe, just maybe, there's nothing waiting for us on the other side. And that's the greatest lie the mind ever told. There's always something on the other side. There's always a new path. There's always another version of you waiting to be discovered. All it takes is the decision to let go of what no longer works. You are not stuck. You are not broken. You are in transition, and the question you need to ask yourself isn't whether you can start over. It's whether you'll dare to do it before life makes the decision for you. Chapter 3. The real challenge of change isn't starting, it's sustaining it. There's no exact day when we wake up and realize we have to start over. Sometimes, change hits all at once. A phone call, an accident, a betrayal, a badly timed word. Other times, change gathers like dust in corners, subtle, silent, imperceptible, until one day we look around and no longer recognize the life we're stuck in. But there's something curious about human nature. We resist the signs that life is pushing us elsewhere. Instead of moving, we cling. We tell ourselves things might still improve, that the path that brought us here couldn't possibly have been wrong. We invent excuses, justify inertia, turn fear into logic, and call cowardice common sense. The problem for most people isn't that they don't know how to start over, it's that they're still waiting for permission, as if someone, someday will show up and say, "Now's the time, now you can change." But that never happens. No one's going to give you the green light. No one's going to tell you it's safe. No one's going to hand you a manual. If you keep waiting until you feel ready, you'll wait until the end of your life. And here's the point that changes everything. Change isn't planned, it's executed. But most people freeze because they believe they need all the answers before taking the first step. They want certainty about the future before they let go of the past. But life doesn't work like that. Life doesn't give guarantees, it gives you chances. So how the hell do we break this cycle? The first trap is autopilot. The human mind is a machine of repetition. We wake up, do the same things we did yesterday, think the same thoughts, react the same way to the same triggers. And then we wonder why nothing changes. If your life hasn't changed, it's because you haven't changed. But here's the good news. Change isn't as hard as we've been told. We were sold the idea that personal growth is a years-long odyssey, that healing the past takes decades of therapy, that reinvention is a slow and painful process. It's a lie. Real change happens in seconds. What takes time is accepting that you need to change. Someone can spend years stuck in a toxic relationship, convincing themselves they can't leave, until one day something clicks and they just walk away. In that moment, everything changes. Someone can spend a decade hating their job, repeating the mantra, "I need the money, I have no other choice," until one day they quit without thinking twice. The problem is never the change itself. It's the moment right before. That instant when your mind fights with everything it has to hold on to what it already knows. But here's the key. If you want to start again, stop negotiating with your fear. You don't need to think about changing. You just need to do it. It's like jumping into a cold pool. There's no comfortable way to do it. You can linger at the edge, dipping in a toe, trying to get used to the temperature, but the longer you wait, the harder it gets. The only way in is to jump. So here's the one truth you need to remember. The right moment to start over will never be perfect. But that doesn't matter. You don't need perfect. You just need movement. The world is full of people waiting for the ideal moment. The problem is, that moment doesn't exist. When someone says, "I'll do it when I have more money," what they really mean is, "I'll stay here until something outside me forces me to change." When someone says, "I'll leave this relationship when I'm sure I won't miss it," what they really mean is, "I'll stay until the pain of staying becomes greater than the fear of leaving." But life doesn't wait. Opportunities don't magically line up. The days pass. The routine becomes a tighter and tighter cage. And in the end, the people with the deepest regrets aren't the ones who took a risk and failed. They're the ones who never had the courage to try. What separates those who truly change from those who stay stuck in the same story is one thing only: the ability to act before they feel ready. Think of the people you admire. They're not necessarily the smartest, the most prepared, or the ones with the most resources. They're the ones who did something while everyone else was still hesitating. Because here's the great irony of life: no one knows what they're doing. The entrepreneurs who are millionaires today didn't know if their business would work when they launched it. The artists who became legends had no guarantee their talent would ever be recognized. The people who built new lives after hitting rock bottom didn't have a master plan. But they tried anyway. That's what separates those who evolve from those who stay behind: the courage to move without certainty. So the question is, what are you waiting for? Are you waiting for someone else's approval? It's never coming. Are you waiting for fear to go away? That won't happen. Are you waiting to feel ready? No one feels ready before doing something new. If you keep waiting, you'll stay trapped in the same story forever. But if you choose to act, if you decide to break the script, to challenge the autopilot of your own mind, then you'll have done what 99% of people never dare to do: start over, not from necessity, but from choice. And in that moment, you'll have reclaimed the only thing that truly matters: your freedom. The problem with most attempts at change is that they depend on the emotion of the moment. Everyone has felt it, that rush of clarity after watching an inspiring video, reading a powerful book, or getting shaken awake by life. You say, "This is it." You make plans, feel energized, start visualizing the life you want. And a week later, everything's back to how it was. Not because you don't want it, not because it isn't important to you, but because real change doesn't come from emotion. It comes from structure. This is the trap of saying, "I'll start tomorrow." Tomorrow begins with the same mind you have today. If you don't hack the system, you'll end up exactly where you started. So how do you make change inevitable? The answer is simple: break the inner resistance before it shows up. The mind is sneaky. It always finds a way to sabotage what you truly want. If you decide to start exercising, it'll tell you to wait until tomorrow. If you want to write a book, it'll say to wait until you feel more inspired. If you want to leave a toxic relationship, it'll remind you of the good times. The mind doesn't seek what's best for you. It seeks what it knows. And here lies the problem. If you keep listening to your mind without questioning it, you'll always find an excuse not to do what you truly need. That's why real change isn't about willpower. It's about structure. Motivation fails, structure doesn't. How to make change inevitable? If you want something to become part of your life, you have to eliminate the option not to do it. You have to trick your mind before it tricks you. 1. Make it ridiculously easy. If you decide to start running, don't think about running 10 kilometers. Just put on your shoes and step outside. That's it. Once you're out, your brain will follow the momentum. If you decide to write a book, don't plan on writing 20 pages a day. Just write a single sentence. The simple act of beginning breaks down resistance. The trick is to make the first step so small that you can't say no to it. 2. Remove decisions from the equation. If every day you have to decide whether or not to go to the gym, eat healthy, or step outside your comfort zone, you're leaving the door wide open for sabotage. Successful people don't make decisions every day. They build structures where the decisions have already been made. If you want to eat better, don't buy junk food. If you want to read more, leave a book on your pillow every night. If you want to wake up early, put your alarm clock on the other side of the room. Eliminate friction. Don't make your life harder than it needs to be. 3. Make it public. People give up when they've only made promises to themselves. But when others know what you're going to do, the story changes. Studies have shown that when we declare our intentions out loud, social pressure helps us follow through, not because we fear failure, but because our brain hates inconsistency. If you declare who you are, you'll want to act accordingly. Don't keep it in your head. Say it, write it, tell someone, make it real. 4. Use inertia. People think they need motivation to act, but the truth is, action creates motivation, not the other way around. If you're waiting to feel ready, you'll never begin. But if you take even one small step, your brain shifts into action mode and starts moving forward by inertia. Do it even if you don't feel like it, even if you're not ready, even if it seems insignificant. The simple act of moving changes everything. The biggest lie we tell ourselves: I'll do it when I feel secure. Security doesn't come before action, it comes after. A lot of people think self-confidence is a requirement to start over, but the truth is, confidence is a side effect of taking action. No one feels confident before doing something important. The singer doesn't feel confident before their first concert. The entrepreneur doesn't feel confident before launching their business. The person leaving a long-term relationship doesn't feel certain they're making the right decision, but they do it anyway. And here's the key: confidence isn't something you have, it's something you build as you walk forward. The problem is we've been trained to wait for the sign, the perfect moment, the absolute certainty. But life isn't a movie with a scripted plot. Life is an improvisation. And the only way to live it fully is to dare to act without guarantees. If there's one thing that keeps people from starting over, it's their attachment to the past. The past can be a shelter or a prison, and often, without realizing it, we build our own jail with memories. Someone who once succeeded fears starting over because they believe they'll never match what they achieved. Someone who's been through pain fears opening up again because they think history will repeat itself. Someone who loved deeply and lost is afraid to love again because they don't want to suffer. But the past only holds power over you if you keep carrying it. And here's the real question: how much longer will you keep dragging it with you? If you're still holding on to what was, you're missing out on what could be. You can't build a new life if you're still living in the old one. The problem is, we were taught that letting go is a loss, but in reality, letting go is the only way to win. Let go of an identity that no longer represents you. Let go of beliefs that no longer serve you. Let go of the need for the future to look like the past. Because here's the truth: if your past had been enough for you, you wouldn't be looking to start over. The biggest lie we've been taught is that we are only one thing, one personality, one story, one way of being. We've been trained to define ourselves as something fixed, static, unchanging. Since childhood, we've heard phrases that boxed us in. We were told we were shy or outgoing, good or bad with money, rational or emotional, logical or dreamers. They gave us labels as if they were absolute truths, and we believed them. But what most people never understand is that identity is just a mental habit. You're not shy. You learn to act that way. You're not bad with money. You were taught to see it a certain way. You're not someone who can't start over. You're simply repeating the same patterns you were taught. If you can learn something, you can also unlearn it. The problem is that we identify too strongly with who we used to be. And that is the main reason real change is so hard. It's not the fear of the future that paralyzes people. It's attachment to the past. The mind is a machine that constantly seeks to confirm what it already believes is true. If you grew up thinking you were unlucky, your brain will filter reality to prove it over and over again. If you were always told you're indecisive, every moment of doubt will feel like evidence that the label is true. The secret to starting over isn't changing your surroundings, or the people in your life, or even the life you're living. It's changing the story you tell yourself about who you are. Most people fail to break their old patterns because they try to build a new life with the same old identity. But it doesn't work like that. You have to become someone different before the world sees it. People wait for the world to give them permission to change. They wait for others to recognize it first, for the environment to validate it, for some external confirmation before daring to shift. But the truth is, no one is going to give you permission to become someone new. You have to decide for yourself. If you've been someone who procrastinates all your life, the only way to stop is to act as if you already are someone disciplined. Not when you feel like you can do it, not when the world validates it, not when you feel ready, now. If you've always been insecure, you can't wait to feel secure before you start acting differently. Confidence comes after. First, you have to act as if you already had it. Here's the trick. People think they have to change their mind first in order to change their life. But the truth is, you change your actions first, and your mind will follow. It's the same thing that happens to someone who starts working out after years of doing nothing. That first day feels uncomfortable. Their identity still tells them they're not disciplined, that they don't like the gym, that they've never been good at staying consistent. But if they keep showing up, if they keep moving their body, something begins to shift. One day, they catch themselves thinking, I'm someone who trains. I'm someone who takes care of my body. And that's the moment when change becomes irreversible. Identity is not something you're born with. It's something you practice every day. If you practice being disciplined, you become disciplined. If you practice being confident, you become confident. If you practice taking risks, you become brave. But if you keep repeating the same old story, you'll keep becoming the same old person. And the story we tell ourselves is the biggest trap there is. We repeat that we're not good with money, that we don't know how to love, that we can't change, that we've never been consistent. But it's not that it's true. It's just that we've told ourselves the same thing so many times that the mind turned it into reality. That's why starting over is not just about making new decisions. It's about destroying the old identity and building a new one through action. Because the real question isn't what you want to achieve in life. The question is, who do you need to become in order to achieve it? And the only way to answer that question is by doing. Many people get stuck in the preparation phase. They research, read, plan, reflect. But they never take the leap because they're waiting to feel ready. What they don't realize is that identity doesn't shift in theory. It shifts in action. That's why so many people try to improve their lives but always end up where they started, because they keep identifying with their old version. If you see yourself as someone who's always been inconsistent, even if you start new habits, you'll eventually abandon them. If you see yourself as someone who doesn't know how to manage money, even if you earn more, you'll still lose it. If you see yourself as someone who's never been enough, even if the world celebrates you, you'll still feel empty. Real change doesn't happen on the surface. It happens at the root. If you want to start over, you can't build on the same old ground. You have to rip out the ideas that keep you stuck. You have to question every thought that has defined you until now. You have to act like the person you want to become, even before you feel like them. The brain follows the body. Confidence comes after movement. If you wait to feel ready, you'll never begin. If you wait to become someone different before acting differently, you'll stay stuck forever. The only way to start over is to act as if you already are the person you want to become. And when you do it enough, when you practice your new identity every day, the mind will have no choice but to accept the new reality, because the mind cannot argue with evidence. If you wake up early every day, at some point your brain will say, I guess I'm someone disciplined. If you take risks every day, eventually your brain will say, I guess I'm someone courageous. If you choose self-respect every day, your brain will say, I guess I'm someone who loves themselves. And when you reach that point, change won't be something you try to do. It'll be something you are. The hardest part of change is not starting it, it's sustaining it. Almost everyone has tried to start over at some point. They've moved to a new city, ended relationships, begun projects with excitement. But if change were that easy, everyone would be living extraordinary lives. Yet most people return to who they were before. Why? Because change isn't an event, it's a system. Many people try to change through emotion. They get inspired, watch a motivational video, read a powerful book, feel like everything is about to shift. And they start strong. But emotion is like boiling water. It's hot at first, but if you don't keep the fire going, it cools down. Real change doesn't depend on emotion. It depends on the systems you build. If you want this new beginning to last, you have to build a system that supports it. Think of the people who've lost weight only to gain it back. It's not because they lacked discipline or couldn't do it. It's because their identity stayed the same. They saw themselves as on a diet instead of as someone who lives a healthy life. The same goes for someone who earns a lot of money but ends up broke. They didn't become someone with an abundant mindset. They simply had money for a while, but their internal system dragged them back to where they started. That's why the only real change is the one that becomes part of who you are. And to make that happen, you have to close every door to the past. This is where most people fail. They try to move forward while still keeping the option to return. They promise never to go back to that toxic relationship, but keep the number saved. They say they won't waste their time anymore, but stay in the same old circle. They swear they've outgrown their old thinking, but keep feeding themselves the same ideas. The key to sustaining a new beginning is to make going back impossible. If you truly want to start over, you have to burn the bridges that lead to your former self. It's not about acting impulsively or breaking everything without thought. It's about making radical decisions that reinforce your new path. If you decide you want to be disciplined, remove every distraction that's led you to procrastinate your whole life. If you decide to build self-esteem, cut ties with those who've spent years undermining it. If you decide you want a different life, you can't keep surrounding yourself with the same mindset that brought you here. The brain needs clear signals. If you leave space to negotiate with the past, it will always win. That's why, when someone makes a definitive decision, it must be followed by radical execution. If you leave the door even slightly open, the mind will find a way to go back. This is the most critical moment of change. This is where the ones who truly transform their lives are separated from those who only try. To close this point, let's go over 3 essential techniques to consolidate your change and ensure you don't fall back into your old patterns. First technique, complete closure. When someone is in a toxic relationship and wants to leave, the worst thing they can do is stay in touch. One message, one call, and the old identity takes over again. If you want to start over, you have to eliminate every access point to the past that could pull you back. That might mean changing your routine, changing the places you go, or even changing how you define yourself. The point is to make sure your new version has no way to return, because if you give the mind an excuse to go back, it will take it. Second technique, constant exposure. You can't build a new mindset without fully immersing yourself in it. If you've always lived in fear of the unknown, you have to expose yourself to the unknown until it stops scaring you. If you've always been someone who sticks to what's safe, you have to surround yourself with people who live without fear. Environment shapes more than we realize. If you don't change what's around you, you won't change either. If you start living like the person you want to become, your mind will eventually adapt to that reality. Third technique, inner declaration. This is where change becomes unstoppable. People who truly transform their lives have one thing in common. They declare who they are to themselves before the world ever sees it. That's why athletes see themselves as champions before they win a title. That's why entrepreneurs see themselves as successful before they achieve it. That's why people who truly change do so before anyone else notices. Because if you wait for the world to validate you, your transformation will depend on others' opinions. But if you declare it inside yourself and start acting from that place, then the transformation becomes inevitable. This is the most important message of the chapter. If you really want to start from zero and never look back, you must declare who you are before the world acknowledges it. Not when you feel it, not when it's reflected around you. Now. Because what you declare with conviction becomes the reality you live. Life is always giving us signs that it's time to evolve. But most of the time, we wait too long. We wait to feel ready. We wait for someone to give us permission. We wait for the fear to go away. We wait for external validation. And while we wait, time keeps moving. If there's one thing this book has taught us, it's that the true beginning doesn't come when things change on the outside. It comes the moment you make an irreversible decision to stop being the person you used to be. From this moment on, there's one thing you can no longer do: lie to yourself. You can't keep telling yourself you can't. You can't keep pretending the world is the problem. You can't keep building excuses to explain why your life hasn't changed. ChatGPT Plus. The final question is not whether you can start over. The final question is, who are you going to be from now on? If you want to know whether you've truly changed, look at what you do in the coming days. If you go back to your usual routine without applying anything you've learned, then this book will have been just a temporary inspiration. But if you start moving differently, even in the smallest way, then you've already won. Life doesn't belong to those who think the most. It belongs to those who act. The world is not designed for those who wait. It is designed for those who create. You don't need to feel completely confident. You don't need to know all the steps. You just need to do something different and let the path reveal itself. The final hack to make your new beginning last. If you truly want this new beginning to be a turning point, there is one thing you must do before closing this book. Something that will make the difference between those who change and those who only read about change. Think of one action you can take today that brings you closer to the life you want. Don't think in abstract terms. Don't say things like, be happier or have more confidence. Think of one concrete action, something tangible. If you've always wanted to start something but have postponed it, make the first move today. If you've always wanted to let go of a relationship or a situation that holds you back, do it now. If you've always wanted to change something in your environment, your mindset, your body, your energy, start now. Don't overthink it, just do it. The only difference between the one who starts over and the one who stays stuck is that one decided to jump and the other kept thinking about it. So the question is, what are you going to do? There's no perfect manual, no guarantees, no absolute certainties. The only thing you have is this moment, now. And in this moment, you have two choices: keep waiting or begin. If you truly want to start from zero, you have to start, not tomorrow, not when the fear goes away, not when everything is perfectly aligned. Now, close this book and take the first step. Do something different. Something that breaks inertia. Something that interrupts the cycle. Something that proves to your mind that change has already begun. Because life always belongs to those who dare to live it. And now it's your turn. But this is not the end. It's only the beginning of a new way to live, to feel, to see life with awakened eyes. If the message of this audiobook resonated in your heart, we invite you to keep exploring, to keep growing, to keep awakening with us. Here, at Let There Be Light, you'll find more paths, more ideas, more answers. We'll see you in the next audiobook, and until then, remember, success, fulfillment, happiness, They are not things waiting for you in the future. They are not destinations, nor rewards. They are the universe pulling you forward. They are the love of God filling your lungs with life. They are this very moment you are living right now, and the permission it gives you to be fully you. See you soon.